Have you ever dreamed of your perfect wedding day, only to have it shattered by the people you thought would stand by you no matter what? Picture this. The dress is picked, the venue is booked, the invitations are sent, and then, bam, your entire family tells you they're not coming. Not because of some petty disagreement, but because of the man you've chosen to spend your life with. That's exactly what happened to me when my family decided to boycott my wedding because of my fiancé, Ethan. The pain of their rejection cut deeper than I could have ever imagined, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family. Why would they turn their backs on me at the most important moment of my life? What could possibly justify abandoning me on the day I needed them most? I'm still reeling from the heartbreak, the anger, and the haunting questions that keep me up at night. This isn't just a story about a wedding gone wrong. It's about the devastating clash between the family I've always cherished and the man I can't imagine living without. As I unravel the shocking reasons behind their boycott, you'll be floored by the secrets that came to light, the betrayal that shook me to my core, and the impossible choices I've had to face. Stick with me through this emotional roller coaster as I bare my soul about love, loss, and the desperate hope I'm clinging to for a future I can't yet see. You won't believe what I discovered about my family and about myself along the way. I grew up in a small coastal town called Seaview, Oregon, where the salty breeze off the Pacific was a constant companion and the sound of crashing waves was the soundtrack to my childhood. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, where community potlucks and Friday night football games were the heart of life. My family was the center of my world. Mom, Dad, my older brother Caleb, and my younger sister Mia. We weren't rich by any means. Dad worked long hours as a fisherman, often gone for days at a time, while Mom juggled part-time shifts at the local diner and kept our chaotic household running. But we had each other, and that was enough. I have vivid memories of rainy evenings spent huddled around the kitchen table, playing board games while the wind howled outside, or summer days helping Dad mend nets on the dock, the smell of fish and salt water clinging to my skin. Family wasn't just important to us, it was everything. I was the middle child, always the peacemaker, trying to smooth over arguments between Caleb's stubbornness and Mia's fiery temper. I idolized my parents, especially Mom, who had this quiet strength that held us together no matter how tough things got. She'd tell me stories about her own childhood in Seaview, about how she fell in love with Dad under the pier during a summer storm, and I'd hang on every word, dreaming of a love story just as epic. My family wasn't perfect. Dad could be gruff and distant after a bad haul, and Mom sometimes carried the weight of unspoken worries, but their love for us was fierce, and I never doubted they'd be there for me through anything. Or so I thought. I met Ethan in my late 20s, during a rare trip out of Seaview to Portland for a friend's bachelorette party. I was 27, working as a kindergarten teacher at the local elementary school, content with my quiet life, but secretly yearning for something more. Ethan was different from anyone I'd ever known, a freelance photographer with a wanderlust spirit, always chasing the next adventure. He had this easy charm, a crooked smile that made my heart skip, and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. We met at a crowded bar, bonding over a shared love of old vinyl records and a mutual disdain for overpriced cocktails. By the end of the night, I knew there was something special about him, something that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. When he asked for my number, I didn't hesitate, even though I knew a long-distance relationship, him in Portland, me in Seaview, would be a challenge. Our relationship blossomed quickly, fueled by late-night phone calls, weekend road trips, and a shared dream of building a life full of spontaneity and passion. Ethan was everything my small-town life wasn't. Unpredictable, ambitious, free. He'd show up at my doorstep with wildflowers he'd picked on a hike, or convince me to skip work for a day to chase a sunset on the coast. I fell hard, and within a year, I knew he was the one. When I brought him home to meet my family for the first time, I was nervous but hopeful. I wanted them to see what I saw in him, the kindness beneath his restless exterior, the way he made me feel like I could be more than just the dependable middle child. But the visit was a disaster. Dad barely spoke, his jaw tight every time Ethan mentioned his unstable career. Mom was polite but distant, her smiles forced, and Caleb outright challenged Ethan on everything from politics to his lack of roots. Mia, usually the most open-minded, whispered to me later that she thought he was too different for our family. I left that weekend feeling deflated, but I told myself they just needed time to warm up to him. Ethan and I got engaged 2 years into our relationship, on a chilly autumn evening under the same pier where my parents had fallen in love. He got down on one knee, the sound of the waves crashing around us, and I said yes through tears of joy. I couldn't wait to share the news with my family, imagining Mom's excitement over planning the wedding, Dad walking me down the aisle, and my siblings standing beside me as I started this new chapter. But when I called them the next day, the reaction was anything but celebratory. Mom's voice was strained as she congratulated me, quickly changing the subject. Dad grunted something about needing to think it over before hanging up. Caleb texted me later, saying he wasn't sure Ethan was right for me, and Mia didn't respond at all. I was hurt, confused, but I pushed forward, determined to prove that Ethan and I were meant to be. Planning the wedding became my refuge, a way to focus on the future instead of the growing tension with my family. We decided on a small ceremony on the beach in Seaview, right near the pier that held so much meaning for me. I spent months picking out a simple lace dress, designing handmade invitations with seashell motifs, and envisioning a day filled with love and laughter. I sent the invitations out 6 months in advance, giving my family plenty of time to prepare. I even included personal notes to each of them, pouring my heart out about how much it meant to have them there. But as the weeks passed, I got no RSVPs, no calls, no texts. When I reached out to Mom, she dodged my questions, saying they were busy and would figure it out. Caleb told me outright that he wasn't sure he could make it, citing some vague work conflict. Mia finally responded with a curt message saying she didn't think it was a good idea for her to come. And Dad, he didn't even bother to reply. My heart sank with each rejection, a cold dread settling in as I realized they might not show up at all. A month before the wedding, I drove to my parents' house unannounced, desperate for answers. I found Mom in the kitchen, her hands busy peeling potatoes, her face lined with exhaustion. I begged her to tell me why they were pulling away, why they couldn't support me on the happiest day of my life. She avoided my eyes, muttering something about not wanting to interfere, but I pressed harder, my voice breaking with frustration. Finally, she looked at me, her expression a mix of sadness and resolve, and admitted that they couldn't come to the wedding because of Ethan. My stomach dropped as she explained that they didn't trust him, didn't believe he could provide for me, and thought he'd drag me away from everything I'd ever known. Dad, she said, was convinced Ethan was using me to escape his own unstable life, while Caleb and Mia felt I was throwing away my roots for someone who didn't fit into our world. I stood there, stunned, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. How could they judge him so harshly without even trying to know him? How could they choose their prejudices over my happiness? I left that day in tears, a storm of emotions raging inside me. I was furious at their narrow-mindedness, heartbroken by their rejection, and torn between defending the man I loved and longing for the family I'd always relied on. I drove aimlessly along the coast for hours, the familiar sight of the ocean doing little to soothe the ache in my chest. Memories flooded my mind. Mom braiding my hair before school dances, Dad teaching me to ride a bike on the gravel road behind our house, Caleb and Mia sneaking me candy when I was grounded. Those moments had defined me, shaped me into the woman I was, and now it felt like I was losing them all at once. I wanted to scream, to demand they see Ethan through my eyes, but deep down, I feared they might never accept him. And worse, I started to wonder if there was any truth to their concerns. Was I rushing into something I wasn't ready for? Was my love for Ethan blinding me to red flags I couldn't see? The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of pain and uncertainty. I confided in Ethan about my family's boycott, expecting him to be as hurt as I was, but he surprised me with his calm acceptance. He told me he wasn't surprised, that he'd felt their disapproval from the start, and assured me he'd stand by me no matter what. His strength gave me a flicker of hope, but it also deepened my internal conflict. I loved him for not pushing me to choose, for not bad-mouthing my family despite their rejection, but I couldn't shake the guilt of knowing I was the reason he was being ostracized. I started to question everything, my decision to marry him, my family's motives, even my own worth. Was I betraying my roots by choosing Ethan? Or was I betraying myself by letting my family's judgment weigh so heavily on me? The wedding day arrived, a crisp spring morning with a pale sun peeking through the clouds. I stood on the beach in my dress, the sand cool beneath my bare feet, surrounded by a small group of friends and Ethan's distant cousins. The pier loomed in the background, a bittersweet reminder of the love story I'd always wanted to emulate. As I walked toward Ethan, who looked at me with such tenderness it made my heart ache, I kept glancing over my shoulder, hoping against hope that my family would show up at the last second. But the beach remained empty of familiar faces, the only sound the gentle lapping of waves and the murmur of our few guests. I said my vows with a lump in my throat, promising to love Ethan through every storm, but inside, I felt like I was drowning in grief. The absence of my family was a physical weight, a void that no amount of love from Ethan could fill. I smiled for the photos, danced under the string lights we'd hung, but every moment was tinged with a hollow sadness I couldn't shake. After the wedding, I tried to focus on building a life with Ethan. We moved into a small rental just outside Seaview, close enough to my past, but far enough to start fresh. He threw himself into his photography, booking gigs that took him across the state, while I continued teaching, finding solace in the laughter of my students. But the rift with my family gnawed at me every day. I drive past my parents' house sometimes, slowing down to see if I could catch a glimpse of Mom in the window or Dad on the porch, but I never stopped. I couldn't face them. Not yet. Not when the hurt was still so raw. I sent letters, pouring out my feelings, begging them to understand why I'd chosen Ethan, but I got no replies. Caleb and Mia stayed silent too, their absence a constant reminder of the family I'd lost. I felt unmoored, caught between the life I was trying to build and the one I'd left behind, unsure if I'd ever find a way to reconcile the two. Then came the unexpected twist that turned everything I thought I knew upside down. About 6 months after the wedding, I received an unmarked envelope in the mail, the handwriting on the front unmistakably my mother's. My hands trembled as I opened it, expecting another cold dismissal, but instead, I found a letter that shattered my understanding of the boycott. Mom wrote that their decision to skip the wedding wasn't just about Ethan. It was about a secret they'd kept from me for years. She revealed that Dad had a history of gambling, a problem that had nearly destroyed our family when I was too young to remember. They'd hidden it from me, from all of us kids, to protect us, but it had left them with a deep-seated fear of instability. When they met Ethan, with his freelance career and nomadic lifestyle, they saw echoes of Dad's past recklessness, and it triggered a panic they couldn't overcome. Mom admitted they'd handled it wrong, that they should have trusted me, but their fear of losing me to a life of uncertainty had blinded them. She ended the letter with an apology, saying they missed me every day, but didn't know how to bridge the gap they'd created. Reading that letter, I felt a whirlwind of emotions crash over me. Shock, because I'd never known about Dad's struggles, never seen the cracks beneath the surface of our seemingly solid family. Anger, because they'd let their past dictate my future, judging Ethan without giving him a chance. And a deep, aching sadness, because I finally understood their boycott wasn't about a lack of love, but about a fear so profound they couldn't see past it. I sat on my couch, the letter crumpled in my hands, tears streaming down my face as I wrestled with what this meant. Part of me wanted to run to them, to hug Mom and tell her I forgave them, to sit with Dad and hear his story in his own words. But another part of me was still so hurt, so betrayed by their silence, their absence on my wedding day. How could I trust them again after they'd kept something so big from me? How could I rebuild a relationship when the foundation felt so shaky? I didn't tell Ethan about the letter right away. I needed time to process, to figure out what I wanted before dragging him into this new layer of family drama. Instead, I started reflecting on my own choices, on the ways I'd contributed to the rift. Had I been too quick to shut them out after the wedding? Too stubborn to keep reaching out? Had I ignored signs of their struggle because I was so wrapped up in my own pain? I thought about Ethan too, about how patient he'd been through all of this, how he'd never once pushed me to abandon my family, even when they'd abandoned him. I realized I owed him more than I'd given, owed him the chance to be part of this messy, complicated healing process if that's what I chose to pursue. Over the next few months, I started taking small steps toward reconciliation. I wrote back to Mom, not promising forgiveness, but acknowledging her letter and saying I needed time. I called Mia, leaving a voicemail just to hear her voice, even if she didn't call back. I drove to Caleb's place one evening, sitting in my car outside his apartment for an hour before driving away, not ready to face him, but needing to feel close to him somehow. Each step was agonizing, a mix of hope and fear, but I kept going, driven by a longing to reclaim the family I'd lost. I also started opening up to Ethan more, sharing bits of the letter, testing the waters to see how we could navigate this together. He listened, as he always did, offering quiet support without judgment, and I felt a renewed gratitude for the man I'd chosen to marry. Now, as I sit here reflecting on the past year, I find myself at a crossroads. The hurt from my family's boycott still lingers, a scar that may never fully heal, but Mom's letter has given me a glimpse of understanding I didn't have before. I'm torn between the desire to rebuild those bonds and the fear of being hurt again, of opening myself up only to face more rejection. I wonder if forgiveness is possible, if we can ever recapture the closeness we once had, or if too much has been broken. I think about Dad's hidden past, about the weight he must carry, and whether I can sit with him one day and hear his truth without resentment. I think about Mom's apology, about whether it's enough to bridge the gap, or if I need more from her to truly move forward. I'm also wrestling with what this means for my marriage. Ethan has been my rock, but I know this ordeal has taken a toll on him too, even if he doesn't say it. How do I balance my need to reconnect with my family with my commitment to him, especially if they still harbor doubts about our life together? Can I create a future where both my family and my husband have a place? Or will I always be caught in the middle, torn between two loves that feel so at odds? I'm sharing this story with you because I'm still searching for answers, still trying to navigate this tangled web of love, betrayal, and hope. Have you ever faced a rift with your family over someone you loved? Or had to confront a secret that changed everything you thought you knew? How did you find your way through the pain? Or are you still searching like I am? I'd love to hear your experiences, your advice, because I believe we can learn from each other's struggles. As I look ahead, I'm left wondering, can a family heal after such a deep wound? Is there a way to rebuild trust when so much has been lost? Thank you for listening to my story, for being here through the tears and the uncertainty. I'm eager to hear your thoughts as I try to figure out what comes next in this heartbreaking, hopeful journey.